Hi, Black Cat Recapped here. Today I am going to explain a mystery and thriller movie named Knock Knock. The movie starts with Evan and Karen, who have a happy life in California with their 2 kids and a small dog. Karen is an artist working on her big art show, while Evan is an architect. One morning, while they're having breakfast, Karen's assistant, Louis, comes over with catalogs for her art exhibition. They all have a friendly chat, and Evan asks their kids if they're ready for a weekend trip to the beach with their mom. Karen shows her artwork to Louis, mentioning it's still drying, and he promises to pick it up once it's dry for the gallery. As Karen and the kids get ready to leave, she tells Evan that his physical therapist, Vivian, will visit the next day. The kids want Evan to come with them, but he has to stay home and work. Later that evening, Evan works on his computer and listens to music on his cool record player. Karen calls and says they miss him. While working late into the night, Evan makes 3D models of his architectural designs. Suddenly, there's a knock at his door, and 2 girls he doesn't know ask for help finding the right address. Evan reluctantly lets them in to use his computer. The blonde girl, Belle, and the other girl, Genesis, explain that they mispronounced the street name to the cab driver and are now far from where they need to be. Evan calls an Uber for them in 45 minutes. The girls ask if they can use his dryer to dry their wet clothes before going to a party. Evan agrees and gives them some robes. He also tries to help Genesis by putting her wet phone in rice to dry it. They start playing music on Evan's old record player and dance. They notice Evan's extensive record collection and are surprised by his age when he reveals it. Evan shares that he married young and that his wife and kids are on a weekend trip they were supposed to take together. The girls feel sorry for him for being alone and hug him. However, Genesis becomes inappropriate by touching him and making remarks about his appearance. Evan starts feeling a bit uncomfortable when Belle sees a picture of his wife and tells him he's lucky. But when Evan begins to talk excitedly about Karen and her amazing art, Belle feels more at ease. Genesis mentions that she briefly studied art history. This prompts Evan to show them Karen's catalog for her upcoming art show in Los Angeles. They even ask Evan about his love life, which makes him a bit nervous. Evan admits he's not used to talking openly about intimacy, and the girls playfully tease him. Evan changes seats and checks on the Uber. Genesis asks how long he's been married to Karen, and he says it's been a while. She then asks if Karen is the only woman he's been close to all those years. Evan explains that when you love someone deeply, you naturally only want to be with them. The girls disagree and have strong opinions about monogamy and human nature, making Evan pause to think. Belle shares her belief that when she gets married, her future husband will want to be with other women, so her solution is to have threesomes to prevent him from cheating. Evan gets even more nervous and changes the topic, asking the girls about their jobs. Genesis, one of the girls, says they work as flight attendants, and they all start pretending to be flight attendants. Evan tries to avoid their playful game by moving to a different seat and asks where they are based for work. They begin talking about their jobs and traveling. Belle says that traveling is the best way to gain life experience. The girls start chatting about their coworkers and find a way to bring up the topic of intimacy. Evan nervously checks on their Uber ride again, and Genesis asks about the bathroom. He gets up to change the record on his music player, and Belle picks a new one from his collection. Evan talks passionately about the artist, and Belle listens intently, even dancing. This inspires Evan to become a DJ for her. He blends one record with another, impressing Belle with his skills. She expresses that she's happy they came to his house instead of the party they were supposed to attend. Evan mentions that his house isn't usually as exciting as it is with them there. Belle believes it was destiny that they met, and convinces him to dance with her. She flirts and tries to kiss him when their Uber suddenly arrives. Belle goes to get Genesis, and Evan fetches their clothes. However, when the girls don't come out to the door, Evan goes to the bathroom. He hears them laughing inside and goes in to give them their clothes, only to find them naked. They claim it's a surprise, and Evan initially acts prudish, saying the Uber is waiting. But Genesis starts kissing him, and when both girls start touching him, he gives in easily. They have an intimate encounter in the bathtub and then in his bed, and all 3 fall asleep together. The next day, Evan wakes up alone in bed. He immediately responds to his wife's text and puts his wedding ring back on. After getting dressed, he checks the house. Evan hears the girls laughing and making a mess in the kitchen. He gets upset about their behavior and asks if he can drive them home or wherever they want to go. The girls laugh at him, which makes him even angrier. Suddenly, his wife calls, and he rushes outside to take the call. His wife calls him a lightweight and starts talking about the kids. Meanwhile, the two girls appear behind him on the glass door, and his wife notices he's distracted, so they end the call. Realizing it will be hard to get rid of the girls, Evan enters the house, cursing and yelling at them. He tells them to get up and get dressed. The girls run into another room. When he goes to get them, he only finds Genesis and looks for Belle. He finds her in his closet, wearing his shirt and asking him to hold her. She throws herself onto him, saying she loves him. Evan takes her back to Genesis and gives them 3 minutes to get dressed while he waits outside. He finishes a cigarette and goes back inside to get them. That's when he sees both of them painting on top of Karen's sculpture. Evan gets really angry. He asks them if they realize what they've done, and they say they were inspired by the previous night. So, he decides to call the police. But Genesis advises Evan that it's not a good plan because they're too young. Evan is confused about what to do, so he asks them how much money they want, which upsets them because it makes it seem like he's treating them as if they are not respectable women. Belle slaps Evan when the doorbell rings. It's Vivian, his therapist. Vivian starts talking right away, and Evan tells her that he's feeling much better and doesn't need therapy anymore. She keeps talking, and Genesis comes out and tells her that Evan doesn't want her to give him a massage. Evan tells Genesis to go back inside, and Vivian gets very upset because she cares for Evan's wife. Evan goes back into the house and sees the girls messing with his record player. He pushes Belle away from the table and tries to get them both out of the house, but they keep bothering him. Genesis keeps making fun of him, and Evan gets really angry. He grabs Genesis by the throat. Evan eventually lets Genesis go and calls the police to report a break-in. Before he can say more, Genesis ends the call and asks Evan for a ride. They all leave the house, and Evan drives them to a different neighborhood. When Belle leaves the car, she invites Evan to meet her mom, but the girls don't go inside her house. Evan goes back home and starts cleaning. He cleans the kitchen, the bathroom, and tries to clean one of his wife's sculptures. The next day, while Evan is working on a project, he hears glass breaking in another part of the house. He checks but finds nothing at first. When he enters the living room, he sees one of his family photos broken on the ground. Genesis hits him over the head with one of his wife's sculptures. Evan wakes up tied to the bed, and Genesis is putting on makeup and humming. He pleads with her to untie him, saying he's a good person who made a mistake. Suddenly, Belle appears wearing his daughter's clothes, including her underwear. Evan becomes very upset and asks Belle to remove the underwear. Belle takes them off and twirls around in front of Evan, saying that every girl's first love is their dad. Evan tells her this is disturbing, but Belle continues playing around. He pleads for her to untie him, but Belle sits on top of him, revealing her deep-seated issues related to her father and her troubled childhood. Belle starts hitting Evan, as if he's the one who harmed her when she was a child. Suddenly, Evan's phone rings, and both of them reach for it when they see it's Karen calling Evan on FaceTime. They get ready to answer the phone call and threaten to undo Evan's pants. Evan pleads with them not to do it, and promises Belle that he'll do whatever she wants. Belle wants to be intimate with him, and jumps on him, while Genesis records it on his phone. Then, Genesis leaves the room. Evan manages to break free from his restraints, and pushes Belle to the ground. He gets up and goes after Genesis, finding her eating cake. He grabs her by the neck, but she sticks her fork into his shoulder, causing Evan a lot of pain. When Belle arrives, she says they have to punish Evan because he hit her. While Evan is unconscious, the girls tie him up again and pretend to play a game show. Genesis acts as the host, and Belle plays as a contestant. Evan calls them crazy liars, so Genesis starts making loud noises with his turntable, hurting Evan's ears badly. He cries out that he could go deaf, so she stops the noise. After Evan answers a question to please the girls, he tells Genesis that she has proven her point. She plays the loud noise again, but the doorbell rings. Louis, who came to collect a sculpture, arrives. Belle moves him to another room, and Genesis answers the door, pretending that Evan is her uncle and they're shooting a music video in the house. When Louis enters to take the sculpture, he notices something is wrong with it. The girls deny any involvement. Louis uncovers the sculpture and sees how they've vandalized the artwork. The girls make up a story about a break-in, and Evan starts making noise. Louis rushes over to help Evan out of his restraints but decides to deal with the girls first. As he hears the girls destroying the sculpture, Louis goes over and scolds them. However, he has a panic attack, but he can't find his inhaler because the girls took it from his pocket and are tossing it around as a joke. Evan pleads with them to give him the inhaler, but Louis loses balance and hits his head on the sculpture's base. The girls laugh and ignore Evan's pleas to call an ambulance and help Louis. Evan believes they've killed Louis, but Genesis blames Evan's wife for the sculpture, saying it killed him. They wheel Evan back into the house and later cover Louis's body with paper, using it to make a sculpture. Meanwhile, Evan attempts to reach his gun. Genesis sends a threatening text from Evan's phone to Louis, and they put Louis's body in his van. The girls return and continue their fake game show act with Evan. He doesn't answer their questions but keeps saying he's a good father and that what happened with the girls hasn't changed how much he loves his family. Later, the girls dig a grave for him in Evan's backyard, then return inside. Just as Evan manages to get his tablet to call Karen, Genesis takes it from him. They change into different clothes from his closet and deface most of Karen's sculptures and Evan's design models. They also give him an unusual haircut, make fun of him. Suddenly, they find Evan's gun, and Belle unties him. Evan asks what she wants, and Genesis says she wants to play hide and seek, giving him 30 seconds to hide inside the house. She tells him that if they don't find him by sunrise, they'll let him go. Evan runs into the kitchen, grabs a knife, and hides. The girls count down from 30 and search for him throughout the house. When he thinks they're far enough away, Evan escapes the house. Genesis catches up to him and says he can scream all he wants because no one will hear him at dawn. The girls roll Evan to the grave, throw him in, and bury him up to his neck. He continues to beg for his life, promises to behave. He tries to negotiate with them, and Genesis says they'll release him if he calls his family and tells them everything. Evan agrees but screams for help when Genesis calls his wife's phone and gets her voicemail. She hangs up as soon as she hears Karen's voicemail. Terrified, Evan thinks she's going to hurt him with the sculpture, but she drops it beside him. He cries and they laugh, telling him they weren't going to kill him. Belle explains it was all just a game, and they mention that all the men they've done this to react the same way. Before leaving, Belle posts the recording of her and Evan on Facebook, then leaves the phone in front of him and exits the house. Evan tries to delete the video but accidentally hits the like button instead of delete. When his family returns home the next day, they are shocked by the chaos the girls left behind in the house.